Hello, hello, Sarah. How is it going?
It's going great. You got me right before I have to travel again for
Where are you going?
a red eye. New York this time. So fun red eye ahead tonight.
Nice. So, what does that mean for you? So, West Coast, what do you leave like 9 or something like that?
So I'm doing the 11:40 p.m. red
Oh
eye
shit. Okay.
because that looked like the least popular.
Nice.
Best chance of I mean I tried to book I think the 10 p.m. or whatever, and there were only middle seats left. I was like, F that.
This is a last minute trip, obviously.
Um, I was, waiting to book it because I didn't know what all my plans were and if I was adding visits to this and,
Got it. Got it.
all
Yep.
the fun stuff.
Been there. Been there. Well, why don't we kick it off? I had a fun kind of weekend. So, I've been dabbling with AI. I could definitely say for myself, I'm not like a bleeding edge type of person. I like to say that. Well, obviously, I'm in technology, so I like to look at like new stuff and stuff like that. But I never really like. I've been using ChatGPT and Perplexity and stuff just for like just general knowledge, but I didn't really dive into it that well. So over this weekend. I had like a business problem to solve, and it would have been like I was just like, well, could I actually like, code this up? Like you hear a lot about these tools, like there's Cursor AI, which is basically like supposed to be you type in a prompt and it'll like literally create an entire application and deploy it for you and everything. And there's lots of things in between. There's code editors. There is Claude, which is like the best LLM for right now, anyways, for actually helping you with coding and stuff like that. And there's all things in between. So I spent like, I don't know, quite a few hours over the weekend just trying to start a project from nothing and seeing how far I get. And for anybody listening, like I used my first half of my career, I was a software engineer. So I'm mostly proficient in like, I'd say iOS. This is so I built some production apps and had hundreds of thousands of users use them. I built the initial backend for Shyp, and also the front end. So I definitely know my way around like older technologies. I don't really know Python, which is something that I've been wanting to kind of pick up. So I was like, wouldn't it be kind of cool if I just learned a new language, stuff like that? So I dove in and I basically just went into an LM and just kind of explained what I wanted to do and asked it to basically write the code for it. I did use Replit's. They will help you do the deployment of everything and compiling, and they're like a web based IDE. And so I did that and basically copied and pasted everything from the LLM. I was using Perplexity. I wasn't using Claude. I wish I would have used Claude. It was my within the first hour, I was like, "Holy shit, this is gonna change." I was like, it was a roller coaster of a day. I was like, "Holy shit, this is gonna change everything." Like, I don't know anything about Python. I'm not like a front end JavaScript person at all. And it just like in the first hour, I had something that I could actually like play with, like on my local machine, and it was like, it was pretty cool. And I was like, "Holy shit, like you could actually do this. Like, this is gonna change everything." And then my confidence got lower and lower as like I had bugs in the thing and it wasn't working properly. And then it was like the thing with LLMs, like they have to be very deterministic. Like it needs to give you an actual answer. So like in this case, it would actually give me the code. It's like, oh, this thing didn't work here. It's like, oh, it didn't sort this array this way or something. It's like, okay, sort this array this way. And it would just like a lot of the times it would just give me the completely wrong thing, or like it wouldn't compile. And it was extreme. I'd say like the to get 60% of the way there, it was very impressive. But the last like 40% took me like another 5 or 6 hours to get it working. And like I still actually didn't actually get it deployed. And I could only run it on my local machine. And so like I was very impressed, but like in my opinion right now, and I was using Perplexity. I know that's not the best LLM for coding, which is supposed to be Claude, so maybe that's different, and maybe things are going to change. I think I came out with it as like, okay, for me, I have a background in coding. this is cool. Like I could tinker. There's been definitely times in my career it's like, oh, I kind of think and code a lot and stuff like that, and be like, oh, if I could just take this data instead of putting it in Excel, it'd be nice if I just like could write this program. I definitely think I'm going to write something like that, but like the world, like the idea that anybody's going to be able to type in a prompt and like get a production ready application going, I don't think we're anywhere
So I
close
had
to
a
that.
similar experience. So I use ChatGPT a lot, and I basically spent, because I was at this conference last week and I had the
Yeah.
nights to just like stay up and not take care of my kids because they weren't there. I was like writing,
What were you
doing all
doing,
these
Sarah?
and doing a little bit of like hacky coding, and I was trying to
Yeah.
use ChatGPT. I had like two spreadsheets of data,
Okay.
and I'm trying to match up they're both childcare providers
Yes.
in the two spreadsheets. I'm trying to match up this provider in this spreadsheet equals this one in this spreadsheet.
Yeah.
But it's a fuzzy match because the addresses aren't exactly the same. Text, you know, names can be different. But I
Yeah.
want to figure out, like, does this match? Do we have some confidence that this matches? And like ChatGPT, like it would keep like spewing out the wrong answer, like doing a
Right.
really bad job. And I kept like okay, like I need to give it a little more information. Like, you know, tell me, like it couldn't just figure it out for my prompt. So I had to
Mhm.
then make my prompts a little more detailed. I got to the point where I'm like, it can't do this. I just need to write a program
Right.
that like does a fuzzy match and
Right.
like
Right.
computes the Levenstein distance between these words and like outputs the ones that it's certain about and the ones that it's not. And it like ended up being, after trying to get ChatGPT to just do it for me, I was like, it's doing such a bad job. And
Right.
it needs so much handholding that I just have to do it myself if I want like accurate matching.
Yeah.
But it was the kind of thing that I would expect, like, AI should be good at this.
Yes. Totally.
Here's two spreadsheets of data, figure out which ones are similar or
Right.
not. Like,
Right.
isn't
Yeah.
that what language models are designed to handle?
Yes.
But it kept effing it up. And like you said, it would get 60% of the way there. And granted, these had lots of entries in them, so I'm not
Mhm.
asking it to compute like 10 rows. But it just kept barfing, like, could not complete the job in a way I would expect, like, an engineer to do it.
Yeah.
I was a little frustrated, like, I know the tools will get there, but, like, when I hear people say, "Oh, it's so easy, you just have ChatGPT and you can fire all your engineers," like, no, you really can't, because I literally stayed
No.
up all night working on this and then had to, like, code it myself. So I feel that. It's not there yet.
Yeah, and also it's just like anything, like it's you when you're working on something new, like you could get a long way with a short amount of work, but like it's always like 90% of the time is the last 10 or 20%. And like if you don't do the last 10 or 20%, like the whole project or whatever you're working just doesn't work. Like I look at like self-driving cars as a perfect like analogy. Like they had so much promise. So I don't know how many years ago now that Cruise got bought by GM for $1 billion, but like they're barely out now. I'm pretty sure it's been like a decade now. Um,
Yours coming soon to
yeah,
my
coming
town. I
soon.
see them driving
Well, and
around.
even Google, right? They were working on self-driving cars for the last 15 years, and they're now finally on the road. And I think that it's like I think AI is going to be very similar for certain use cases, and you're still going to need just so much fucking data. And also I'd be worried, especially thinking about the coding use case, like how is it like, 'cause it's obviously training based on all of the other what's available publicly is crawling the web and getting like the through forums or Stack Overflow or through GitHub and public repo whatever, open source stuff and all of this stuff. But like, if you don't continue people don't continue to contribute to it, how is it going to continue to keep up with the latest and greatest stuff? Like I've heard from other developers, like Python is actually pretty well. It's a pretty easy to write Python. Like it hasn't really changed, but like something like JavaScript that has like so many different new versions of stuff, it's much harder to get that. So it's like, how are we going to continue to feed this like these models with? And I'm not in AI, and I'm sure there's somebody listening to this who's like, well, of course, is this going to be we're going to be able to feed it this and like that's the solution, but like I really think I was very hopeful. It was like a roller coaster of a day, and, I came out with it as like, "We're nowhere really close," but I think that people there it like, I'm like, my the developers that I work with, and people that I know, like, you can get like, it's like a multiplier on, like, your work, but, like, there's still, like, there's no, like, enter this, like, prompt,
Yeah,
and you
and
could
it just
get
it
something.
frustrates me when I hear, like, VCs, like,
Oh
"Oh, couldn't
god.
you just do this with AI?" It's like, it's a tool right now in your toolkit, but, like, sometimes it actually makes the work take longer when you have
You're
to
totally right.
prompt it and go
Yeah.
back and forth, and then, like, ultimately, I was like, "I'll just do this myself."
Well, then you don't actually learn, like, how to do it correctly that first time, so I kinda worry about a lot of, like, the more junior engineers that are gonna be relying a lot more on, like,
That's true.
LLMs and these different tools, and it's like they don't understand the fundamentals of, like, what you actually need to do, and it's like they're just gonna get lost. If they can't have the AI solve it, it's like they're not gonna be able to get to the finish line without a solid core foundation, so I think we're definitely, like, from AGI, I think we're way we're out there. I think what's the saying? It's like everybody underestimates what you could get done in
Right.
10 years and overestimates what you could get done in a year. Like, all of this stuff is definitely not worth it. However, does that mean, like, ChatGPT is not valuable? Like, I think that the revenue speaks for itself. They obviously, like, for general knowledge, I think that these AIs are there today. Like, they absolutely are. Like,
Right.
I
Great,
use.
like, top of funnel research, point you in the right direction, but, like, I think, founders who are out there feeling like some FOMO of like, "Oh, I should be using AI more," and, like, "I'm just not finding the use case to, like, fire all my employees," like, that's because it's not there yet.
Yeah.
Don't FOMO too hard that, there's some magical, like, orders of magnitude unlock yet that, I'm sure everyone's taking advantage of the stuff that's out there in the low-hanging
Right.
fruit where you can use these tools.
Right, well, just
At
like
the
things
common.
just like things like, in the coding world, like IDEs that would, like, autocomplete certain, like, classes or
Right.
something like that, like, they've been around forever. I'm like, that's a huge advantage, and it just saves so much extra time that you just didn't need to go and write all that stuff out manually. But I think actually where startups do have an advantage over, like, the incumbents is that most likely you're gonna get people that are, like, they wanna try out AI and they're hopeful. I think that the best position, like, engineers and companies are, like, startups that are hiring senior engineers that are they're willing to they don't have an existing code base or all this stuff they have to, like, really maintain. They can kind of use these tools and get more leverage out of their time,
Yeah.
but they still fundamentally understand how all the coding works. I think that
Yeah.
today is where you're gonna see the biggest advantage, and, like, typically people, big companies, they like to just kind of punch in and, like, do the minimum amount of work and, like, have the nice benefits and all that. Like, I've been there before. That was my first half of my career working for larger companies as a software engineer. Like, that I don't think that's gonna change. And also, like, they have a probably huge code base that is, like, it's these tools would be helpful, but I think going and starting something new will have you'll have the most leverage on it. So, anyways, that was kind of my learning on that, and I definitely, like, think if you're thinking about scaling up a team, you gotta go for people that are willing to use these tools. Like, if you have people who are not curious about the latest and greatest in technology, like, things are changing a lot faster, especially in the developer, scene. It'd just be like somebody in, like, content, if they were not willing to, like, use ChatGPT to, like, get some ideas or, like, brainstorm or something like
Yeah.
that, like, you want somebody that is, like, willing to learn that if you're gonna be hiring them. But I don't it's definitely not like a solve all and, like, all of the developers are going. I hear that there's everybody has hot takes, obviously. It's like, "You're, like,
Right.
going to school for software is useless." I don't think so. Like, I don't know, maybe getting a master's and or a PhD in software engineering is probably not as valuable, but, like, having the foundation, I don't know. I went to school. I only did, like, a 2-year, initially a 2-year diploma and got some, like, good learnings out of that. I think having the foundation of that to go back on is was very helpful for me, and I think probably I would guide people to do something similar to that. Yeah, things are changing, but it's definitely not like all of the hype. As with any hype cycle in technology, it's not gonna solve all of your
Well,
problems.
Let's talk about the anti-hype,
All right, let's talk
because
about
I
it.
had a viral LinkedIn post about, news that came out
Ooh,
yesterday, and I don't think it was my writing, I think it was the news itself that made people excited to share it, which was that there's this, like, STEM activity kit toy I they're referred to as a toy brand, but I don't see them as toys, they're these, like, kits in a box for your kids called KiwiCo. I have been a subscriber over the years. It actually starts from like when your kids are really, really little up until I think now like elementary age, maybe even beyond. They send you age appropriate kits and activities where your kids learn about different, science and technology topics,
yeah.
building these activity kits. And this company just announced they surpassed $1 billion in lifetime revenue. They raised their last round in 2015, and in total raised just $10 million in funding. So $10 million got them to $1 billion in lifetime revenue. I was kind of doing some rough math on their like probable ARR, but I would guess in the hundreds of millions in
Mhm.
ARR to get to, a billion in lifetime and less than a decade. But, you don't hear KiwiCo talked about a ton in the tech circles. I hear of it because I'm in early education and I'm a parent.
Right.
But, this is a real success, I think, where they've taken very little
Massive
capital.
success. Yeah.
They've been able to grow, profitably and invest those profits back in their growth, I'm sure. They have, over 100 employees. So I'm sure they're spending some of those profits to grow. But, you can build a really successful company on very little. And here's a company that isn't just a pure, SaaS play. They
Right.
have, actual physical kits that they're developing and shipping to people. So there's a lot involved in this company. But they were able to do it on just $10 million. And I think you don't hear about them. I mean, we don't celebrate them because they didn't raise these mega rounds, but that's kind of
Right.
like exactly the reason we should celebrate it. So anyway, I posted about them on LinkedIn, and I think people are excited. And I would wish that there would be ways for companies like this to get more press and excitement because this is what we want to attract. We want to attract founders to these industries like early education and parenting, where there's lots of money to be made. I think very, very lucrative fields, but don't have a lot of the hype of like the AI, coding tools.
Yeah, this is definitely well, it's kind of what I'm trying to do with my career. Obviously, I'm going the venture route, but like I'm trying to stay out of like the hype cycles as well. I think those just like get you in trouble. There's so much competition, and yeah, you're likely going to get more interest from VCs and everything like that. But at the end of the day, as a founder, an entrepreneur, like you're just trying to build a business, and you should be using the tools they're at your disposal to build the business you want, how big or how small you want. And this just happens to be that I would assume that they'd be worth over $1 billion if they sold. I don't know. And they're a consumer CPG company, so I'm not sure what kind of multiple they get, but like $1 billion is pretty amazing, raising just that little amount. But yeah, this is a great example. Like there's no one path to build a really big business, and they obviously I don't know if this was their plan from day one. They obviously did go the venture route early on, and I don't know if they planned to raise more capital and they were kind of forced that they couldn't, so they had to get profitable. They're obviously profitable if they're growing like that. But yeah, this is another example. Like I I I would stay out of the hype cycles. Like though it's just like a recipe for VCs. They love it because they're looking to for the next Google, the next OpenAI, and all of that. But you as a founder, the chances of success are a lot lower when you have so much competition. Even though that those are the companies that get all of the notoriety and all of that. And also, it's kind of hard. Like it's because there are funding milestones, even publicly or on in the press or
Yeah.
whatever. Like it's hard for like even this company. Like should they have like been public? It's like, hey, we just crossed $100 million in revenue. Like Is that something like what would be some of the reasons they would do that? Probably to attract talent would be one of them. To maybe have more awareness for potential customers would be another one. But it's like it's hard to like really know how good a company is, and unfortunately, like amount of capital raised, who your investors are, valuation, all those things are external signals that you can kind of like measure a company's success kind of externally. So I don't know if that's
Yeah, I
ever
mean, I
going to
think there's,
change.
like, 2 kind of surefire ways to get press. One is raise a sizable round,
Yeah.
and you will get a press cycle around that, the bigger, the more press. And the other is publish your numbers. And, like, I, kind of benefited from this when Winnie was on the, Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing companies.
Yeah.
I shared some of our revenue figures and our growth rate, and then I got to be on a popular podcast, This Week in Startups.
Oh, and
Got
that came from that.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
wow.
and
Oh,
got
because
to
they're like,
sit on
we
that,
had no
and
idea. That's
the
great.
thing that Alex Willem, who interviewed me for that podcast, said is like, you know, I'll interview companies who will share numbers.
Right.
If you share real revenue figures with me, like that's newsworthy and interesting.
Right.
And I think KiwiCo did the same thing to get this press. They shared that they surpassed 1 billion in lifetime revenue. But I think
Right.
if you don't share your own metrics that
Yeah.
are not usually shared, or you don't raise funding, it's hard for the press or even the general public to know that you're interesting enough to pay attention to.
Right.
You kind of have to, then think of something that fits you into the news cycle. But these are kind of surefire ways to get press. I wish more companies shared. I wish KiwiCo had shared their
Yeah.
run rate and their profits and all that. But glad they shared what they shared. Yeah, I would be really interested to know, like, they had some, popular investors like First Round and
Hmm.
Forerunner. Like, did these investors just really not push them to raise additional capital? Like, that's pretty cool. Like, they saw this company being profitable and they were like, keep growing this way, go for it.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of unusual for investors. Or, like, was it the case that KiwiCo at one point had trouble raising, got profitable as a result, and then realized this is better? Um,
Yeah.
that was kind of the Winnie path where we, like, realized the market was not going to allow us to raise
Right.
and got profitable, and we're like, "Well, this is better anyway, let's just do this." So I'd be curious about that backstory. Maybe we could have the founder on
That'd be
our
awesome.
podcast.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be super awesome. Yeah, I also wonder how they look. Like they obviously to get venture, like the pitch has to initially be that we're going to continue to raise venture like that.
Yeah.
Like I do wonder. Obviously, like I saw that first round post as well. They were celebrating the $1 billion in revenue surpassed, but I wonder how they actually view the company internally because how venture funds work is that they obviously they're eventually they want to return capitals to their LPs, but they go through multiple funds and they do raise their next fund a lot of times off of markups from their private companies. And so this company most likely probably doesn't have a valuation if they didn't take any more money or if they didn't sell any
Mm.
secondary or something like that. So were these investors being like, well, how do I value you? How do I raise my next fund? I'd be curious to know about that. But that's
And
also,
they raised in 2015, so, like, these funds have hit their fund life cycle or are
yes,
about to, and so they do need to return money to their LPs.
right.
Now, I think all funds right now are having trouble returning money to their LPs because there's not a lot of liquidity.
Yeah,
Um, Acquisitions aren't happening, these these companies aren't necessarily raising the next round for various reasons, and
right.
so that's kind of a challenge all around. But yeah, I mean, it didn't say they didn't sell secondary, so it's possible that
Yeah,
there was a secondary sale that valued the company at some point along the way, and maybe investors had
right.
uh, the ability to get out at that time, or at least mark up their investments.
Yeah, the headline obviously was like, "Hey, how amazing is this company? They only had to actually take in $10 million, but who knows what actually happened behind the scenes, or right? There could be an internal valuation or something like that. But yeah, very, very, very interesting, and definitely, I don't know. It goes back to like the thing is like there's no one way to build a company. You don't need to do this, 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 this. Like there's so many different ways. I'd
And
be
everything on the outside about this company, people would say, operating in early education, that's
oh
not sexy.
yeah,
Shipping
DVC,
physical
yeah,
goods, that's not sexy.
no,
Like,
yeah,
uh, you know, female founded company that,
yeah,
makes it do worse. Like, except this company is really successful. So it's definitely defying all the narratives
right,
about, what makes a great company. So I'm really glad they got some press. And like I said, I've been a subscriber over the years for my kids,
yeah.
and I'm also just a fan of the product.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That actually is there was another thing that just, was announced. I don't know, do you listen to Harry Stebbings, his podcast?
I have heard of it. I've listened to some
You've never listened to
episodes.
it?
No, I have.
Okay.
Sometimes he has sent me episodes and said, like, "Listen to this one." Everyone, God damn it, everyone has a podcast these days. Like, it's hard to keep up. Like,
Yeah.
literally, I have, like, a queue. Thank God I have a flight coming up because I got, like, a long queue of people's podcast episodes they want me to listen to.
The reason I bring it up, is so the news today was that he raised a $4 million fund, and, I believe it's, like, entirely seed focused. That's, what his previous fund was, so I'm assuming that's gonna be the same thing, and he gets both and, like, he does I don't know, I think he does, like, 5 or 6, like, episodes a week. I listen to most of them because I think it's really
20-minute
interesting.
VC.
Yeah, 20-minute VC, but he also has a lot of founders on, and then he'll also have like growth people on and product people on. So he's got a really good reach, which also is a really interesting way for him to get deal flow. So like, my question to you would be like, and you can even leave Harry if you know him out. You don't have to say anything about him, but like, do you think that'd be like a benefit, for a VC for you to take their money as like a venture founder if they have like a platform that they can maybe get you on? Do you think
No.
that's like you don't think so?
No, I mean, I think it's fine, but, like, that's one
Yeah,
podcast appearance, maybe 2 over the lifetime of your company. No one would make a decision about taking money from someone based on that, and I don't even think it would necessarily sway people. It's a good chance to meet someone, though, and then decide you like Harry and you
yeah,
you think he's a smart person, you wanna take his money for that reason and his network
right.
and all of that, but I don't think, like, the chance to appear on a podcast or get written up about on their, like, content marketing site that they all have is, like, a reason to take I mean, God, I hope not. I hope founders aren't making their
Well,
decision based
you compared to a lot of other VCs, right? Like what is like everybody talks about value add, right? This is maybe some tangible value add. And I think like I'm assuming that LPs that invested in this fund was because of his podcast
Yes, I
ultimately.
think LPs, yes, they are more swayed by the, like, content marketing hype, and I think that's the reason a lot of VCs do this, and founders certainly learn about VCs from
Yes.
some of the stuff they put out there, but I don't know that they necessarily make the decision to take money from someone based on that in the same way that LPs might actually make a decision to invest, based on someone having a podcast or a cool website with a blog or whatnot.
Yeah.
But it's certainly a way to increase your reach. And he was based in the UK, right? So like
Yeah.
the fact that he's been able to build such a network here in the US is a testament to his platform. And like a really great reason he'd do it. But I think like that's from a founder's perspective, that's a way you learn about him, but you should take money from him because you think he's gonna be a valuable person to have on your cap table
Yeah.
and aligned with what you wanna build, not because he has a popular podcast, because I guarantee that's giving you, like, 1 appearance and 1 bump, and probably doesn't even have his portfolio companies on the podcast because
He
then
talks about them. He definitely
okay.
does. Yeah. But yeah, I totally agree with you. But I think a lot of people that probably haven't raised venture be like, oh, I get on Harry's podcast. There's I don't know how many listeners he has. Millions of listeners. Like they're gonna be all VCs, perfect audience, or he's my next round. Like that may me the reason I'm sure there's a reason that some founders take it, but I agree with you
Yeah.
too.
I mean, also, like, some of these press events are, like, great for people learning about your thing, but they can also be a little bit problematic, especially early on if we're talking about early stage companies. Like, I
Yeah,
remember back in the day, in the early days, Winnie got, featured by Apple
right.
in the App Store multiple times, and
Yeah.
we'd get, like, big bumps in growth, and we'd be like, "Oh, we're doing so well." But those users eventually churned out, and
Mhm.
that wasn't a real sustainable thing. And it was just confusing in the beginning. Like, I wish I could go back in time and not have had that free promotion because it really skewed our understanding of whether what we were building was valuable.
Right.
And of course, now that we actually have something that people use and like, we have not gotten any free
Yeah.
promotion from Apple. God damn it.
Right.
But yeah, that stuff can be, sometimes pretty problematic for like an early stage company who's
I
not quite
totally
ready.
agree. Yeah. Yeah, and also not sustainable. These are not sustainable channels. Not saying that you should not do them. Like I think like I used press a lot with Shyp, and it was great to get customers because they were, like, mostly, like, the people that would read, like, the TechCrunches and all of the other tech publications were potential customers, and that was good for growth, and we get a lot of press, and also it was good for investors, and also it was good for, employees as well, so there definitely are reasons to do it, but yeah, as a growth channel, that those types of channels that are just kind of one-offs, if they're not repeatable, they're kind of a nuisance, honestly. They,
Yeah.
like, artificially just prop you up, and it's like, you're not able to reproduce that. So, like, you should be focused more on your time on, like, getting those channels, and that you can just, like, turn up the dial, whether that's just, like, spending more on marketing or outbound sales or partnerships or whatever, things that are more sustainable.
Yeah. And what I've seen some startups do is actually have their own podcast or content channel,
Yeah,
sometimes from the brand and sometimes not. Like sometimes from the founder, and it's branded slightly differently, but it's their company's uh, podcast.
right.
And I think that can work really well in certain markets. And is a pretty interest, especially if you have like a niche and you can kind of own those kinds of listeners.
Right.
So super interesting, but that's your own, go direct,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
control the message, have the channel.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, no, totally. Um, other thing, I don't think that we can not talk about, Elon. Like, he's literally all over the news, especially I know
Right.
sorry, I know you're a big, X user, so he's the
I have seen him all over X. It's interesting, like, so you can give a summary. There was a rocket launch and then, the autonomous robots, or maybe
yeah,
not so autonomous,
yeah,
that
maybe not
launch.
so autonomous.
And then
Yeah,
there's also, all the talk about, supplying Americans with, wireless internet, especially, in the aftermath of the hurricanes and, initiatives of the Biden administration and, like, how he has Starlink and, like,
yeah.
we're not necessarily deploying that to people that need it. So that's been very newsworthy lately too.
It's just kinda crazy all the things that he's involved in, and you could agree with some of the things he does or not, but it's just like it's hard to discount what he has really accomplished. So the big news over the last week, so they just so SpaceX just launched their largest payload ever, and it went up into space and then came back down. It landed, and this was I'm not super technical in aerospace, so I don't know all the technical details, but, like, this was, like, one of the biggest moments, that SpaceX and, just this field in general has had, and it basically has, like, I think over all of their launches over the last, like, couple decades, I believe that they have reduced the cost that it actually takes, to put things in orbit by at least like 5 times or something like that. So enabling you to like launch more satellites, and this has also enabled like new services like Starlink, which is a Wi-Fi service run on satellites that SpaceX operates, and so you can get internet literally anywhere in the world. And I believe it's only like $150 a month. Like, and I know a lot of other companies are going to be using this to like do things like manufacture in space, and like this is the next step to go to. I believe the plan is to go to the moon and then go to Mars. And it's just really remarkable what he's done. He just looking at SpaceX versus like NASA, who was
Right.
government funded, and like really after they went to the moon, they really kind of like stopped innovating. And you have this private company that nobody really thought was going to be a company, and he's like really turned it into something pretty remarkable. All the engineering feats that they've done, and now there's a lot of commercial applications that are viable. So like that is one piece of news. The other piece of news was the what was the actual what do they call it? It was something robot, but basically for Tesla, they had an event that they announced their self-driving car, which is a two-seater standalone vehicle that is supposed to be less than $30,000. And I believe the plans are for that Tesla's going to operate these. The details are pretty sparse, so I don't know if you can actually own these, and maybe you can recoup some of the the money from that. But this is like a competitor to what Cruise is doing with GM and other
Mhm.
automakers, and also what Waymo is doing with Google and or Alphabet and other automakers, and just having this self-driving fleet. But it is different than.
Have you been in a Waymo, by the way?
I have not actually. That's one of the
It's,
things I
like,
need to do. Yeah.
life changing. Like,
Yeah.
it's amazing. Like, you could be a critic of this stuff all you want, but don't until you take a
Until you try it.
Waymo
Yeah, yeah,
ride, and,
yeah.
like, it's just unbelievable, and I even took one that got messed up and they had to reroute it.
Right.
But
It's getting there.
it's just amazing to see that that is possible, and it feels like the safest ride you've ever been in,
That's
um,
awesome.
which is even more unbelievable of the technology. But anyway, I'm like a believer, even if the technology is not quite there,
Right.
like AI, and people are saying these robots were controlled by humans at the event. And I'm sure there was some stuff going on, but like it will
Yeah.
get there. Um, and it like you can hate Elon Musk all you want, but you can't deny this guy is prolific, and he's
Yeah.
really pushing innovation forward in so many different ways. And like we should we should embrace that, even if you dislike some of the things he says and his
Totally.
policies and his politics, and you don't love him as a person. Like you can't discredit what he's done.
Yeah. And then yeah, so the other announcement was the robot, the humanoid that
Right.
they're supposed to be. I think they're gonna. He says that they're gonna start producing them over the next few years, and they're supposed to cost between $20,000 and $30,000. I think that so, and also to be clear, they had them at the event. They look cool, but apparently they were human operated. To me, this is like one of those Elonisms. Like he definitely wants to create a big show and things. Technology typically is not there when he's actually like showing it
Right.
off, but then he somehow pulls it off many years
I
later.
think he tweeted something like, "Look, he could be wrong by like 5 plus or minus 5 years." Like,
Yeah.
his time frames are just much, much wider,
Yeah.
but he's proven that, like, he will get there eventually, even if it was, like, 5 years or 10 years
Right.
after he promised it, he's gonna get there.
Well, and I think it's really great to have somebody like this. Like, so talking about industries that didn't really get like venture love. Like, I think like
Right.
robotics in general, space in general. Now, defense is, and I think this is probably based on like some of the breakthroughs that SpaceX is having. Like, it's really before it's like only software was like a
Right.
venture backable like business, and only certain industries and certain models and all of this, and like just Elon in general, like, has completely broken the mold. Like, who would have, and I know he had a really tough time raising for all of his companies, even with his accomplishments. Like, Tesla almost went bankrupt, SpaceX almost went bankrupt and everything like that. And so, like, I think we need more people like him, and again, to Sarah, your point, like, you could agree with all of his policies, and yes, he does, like, he I'm sure he lies a lot of the times, and he just, like, fabricates a lot of the shit up and all of this stuff, but, like, he has proven him time and time again that he can deliver,
And they're not all
eventually.
gonna, you're not gonna knock it out of the park every time.
No,
And so you gotta take what he says in his
and you need to
promises
fail,
and his
that's one of his
yeah.
big things too, like,
Well,
if you're
like
not failing, you're not pushing
right.
it hard enough.
And I think there's a lot of successes under his belt that with that folks should give him a little more credit than I think some folks are just really, you know, both skeptical and really diminish what he's done. And I think as a founder, you have to admire that, even if you don't admire a lot of the other things he says and some of his, maybe misogynistic viewpoints.
Sure, yeah,
You've got to admire the innovation and the number of like shots on goal that he's taken and actually scored.
right. Yeah, it's hard not to look up to him, but a lot of people, it's kinda crazy, like, even there's a lot of founders that really don't like him, and it's just like, he's really paving the way for, like, either new industries or, like, just being an inspiration to, like, the younger generation, like, we need people like him, we need people like him, we need people like Jeff Bezos and, like, the Mark Zuckerbergs, and you can agree with, like, their or not with their politics or anything like that, but, like, they are, like, the entrepreneur, like, you remember when, I'm sure when, like, The Social Network, the movie came out, like, I think, like, that in itself was, like, a moment that really inspired a lot of, like, entrepreneurship, and, like, we need kind of these figures that can do that because we need, the real disruption and real innovation comes from newer companies, like, I think I was reading something on Twitter, and somebody was like, "I look back and, like, all of the major breakthroughs in, like, every single industry, and there was not one that came from an existing incumbent." Like, there was no, like it wasn't
Wow.
like, if you rewind, like, 100 years ago, it wasn't like the large, like, telecom, companies that created, like, the internet or the browser or anything like
Well,
that. It was like, it was a combination of
I mean, look at
that
like
was a bad example.
Amazon and then AWS. Like there's definitely some examples of like existing large companies innovating in new
Sure.
directions. Um,
But I
but
think
yeah.
I think when the founders are definitely still in control, I look at an Apple and, like, I just got the latest iPhone, and then I was upgrading from a 13 to a 16, I can't tell the difference.
Can I
Um,
just tell you the most amazing thing? I lost my Apple Watch
yeah,
for like over a month and it's on my to-do list to buy a new one. And I've
yeah,
been like struggling without it. I love tracking my exercise.
right,
But I was just hoping it would turn up. And then I was finally like, okay, it's gone. I lost it. I need to
yeah.
buy a new one. And yesterday it was recovered by my cleaners. I don't know where they found it, where it was, but they found it. So yeah, I was because I was like, oh, I have to buy a new Apple Watch, and like I don't think anything has really changed about it. Like there's
It
some
hasn't, and that's my point,
I think
like,
sleep apnea detection, but I'm like, I don't have sleep apnea, I'm sure of that. So like I don't really want to shell out for a new one.
well, and my point was, like, it's really when you have these, like, these leaders that are able to just kinda, like, cut through all the I don't know if this is, like, this is the founder mode or whatever the hell you wanna call it, but, like, they're able to just cut through all the noise and just get shit done, and they just have another, like, gear, another drive. They're not afraid to fail most of the time, and, like, you have the Elons that are just, like and they come up with these things, and they just, like, get this shit done where, like, at Apple, like, I'm sorry, but they're not like, they're still riding off of majority of stuff that Steve Jobs did. Like, obviously,
Yeah.
the leadership team they have there is great, and their products are great, but, like, they're missing out a lot. I don't even think that they're doing the self-driving car anymore. I think that project was
Yeah, I think
cut.
the end did that, yeah.
Uh,
I mean, the other thing I really and I am not an Elon fangirl whatsoever,
yeah.
like, you know that.
Yes.
But the other thing I really, like, admire about him is, like, I just look at all the shit he gets, especially from, like, regulated industries, like, the stuff
Oh,
that's happening
yeah.
with the Biden administration not using Starlink and,
That's just crazy
basically
shit.
flushing money down the toilet of our hard-earned, tax dollars and not providing people with internet when there's a great solution available out there that we
Right.
all know works amazingly well and is the best thing on the market, and they're not using it. And then it takes like a catastrophe, like a hurricane, to finally get some Starlink out there. But I mean, that to me, we get, we operate in a regulated industry in childcare, and like we sometimes feel bad when like we see that there's government spend in childcare that's just wasted. It's not going to families, it's not going to
Right.
child providers. It's going to the stupidest shit that is like these, build a tech platform to search for childcare in the state of, whatever. And then it's like this platform that no one uses and it's
Right.
just wasting billions of dollars. And it's frustrating. And you just want to quit and be like, why can't that money go to something useful? But then you see it happen to Elon too, who's built this amazing product.
It's
And
crazy.
slow, there's this like, they almost like the government doesn't want to use the best in class thing out there. They just want to waste money. It's that to me, like I am inspired by that. I'm like, if it can happen to Elon Musk,
Yeah.
Starlink, then it's okay. I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep building.
Exactly. Yeah.
Eventually, this will get to the people who need it. And I just can't be frustrated by the waste on the government side
Right.
because I can't control that. Like
Right.
I can only build and try to get my product out there. So anyway, that's to me like inspiring as a founder that yes, everyone, no matter how successful you
Yeah.
are, has to deal with the same shit.
Well, and I think what wasn't Elon, I'm pretty sure he was a Democrat for a while, and he was supporting that party, and then they just kinda iced him out for whatever reason.
And I mean, it's to me like there's been government waste under Republicans,
Of course.
Democrats, like it's
Yes.
universal government waste. And it's happening for lots of reasons. And like, this is absolutely not a like, Democrats are the ones being wasteful. There's
No.
tons of government
There
waste under
of course.
all administrations in my lifetime.
Yeah.
But I am so familiar with the waste in childcare, and this has
Right.
happened under Republican and Democrat
Yeah.
administrations
Yeah.
because just no one understands how this money is being spent and it's billions of dollars that are allocated and wasted
Right.
at both the federal and state level. And so, Republican administrations at the state, Democratic administrations at the state
Right.
level, both kinds of states can be equally wasteful
Yeah.
when it comes
Yeah.
to the end.
Yeah, no, it's great to see people like that, and people like that are trying to work with the government, coming up with new business models. Like Andrew's another example. Like they're create instead of the if anybody's, I used to work for a defense contractor, and like it was just crazy to see that just the waste of spending. Like nobody's fucking doing any work, and these like $1 trillion projects, and then Andrew comes out and they're actually building products that are like 10 or 100 times cheaper than what the kind of the traditional, like the Raytheons or whoever the defense contractors are building it because they're really close to the government and they have a lot of ties, and it's it's just really tough. So it's really nice to see people like the Elons and everybody else that especially are able to break through all this government bureaucracy. But essentially, you just need to build something that customers really love, and then hopefully you can convince the government to give you funding or sell the government or something like that. I
And
love
even if
these
you
new
can't,
business
like, you just
models.
got to keep going. Like,
Yeah,
even though Elon, couldn't, or maybe now he can, but initially couldn't, like, he kept going.
I
Like,
know.
Starlink is getting out there to people with the government's help or not.
Cool. Yeah, it's great to see. Well, why don't we end it on that note, and maybe who knows if you're taking a United flight tonight, maybe you'll have Starlink, right?
Oh yeah. Well, isn't there some deal now with United?
Yeah. Are you taking? Is it a United flight?
Yeah, but I'm just gonna sleep. It's red eye. I won't. It's such a short time window. You get like 4 hours of rest by the time you're in the
Yeah, I've
air
been
and woken
there.
up. You
All
got to
right.
take it.
Let's see you later, Sarah. Thanks everybody for
Bye.
listening. Bye.